policy has been an issue that I consider key in our efforts to change the direction of this country. Of course, I think changing our monetary system and getting rid of the Fed is also very important. We also are very interested in promoting the cause of liberty when it applies to us as individuals, because liberty is an individual matter. You don't have collective rights. You don't have rights because you belong to a group. You have a right because you're an individual. You get your rights from the Creator. They're God-given rights. You have a right to your life, your liberty, and you have a right not only to pursue your happiness, but to earn a living and to keep what you earn. Whoa! Today we face a major crisis, and the two crises that have existed, the foreign policy, the disaster that's been going on for quite a few decades, along with the financial disaster that we are in the midst of, they're coming together because the financial problems that we have today are linked to the foreign policy. Because we have an empire that is too big, continues to grow, it's out of control, and all empires end for financial reasons, so that is the reason we all exert a lot of effort in unwinding the empire and defend this country and defend our liberties here at home. Whoa. So as much as it is now popular with many Republicans to attack our president, which I do on occasion, the whole effort to change our policy is not a partisan issue. It's a bipartisan issue. The solutions eventually will be bipartisan, but the problems have been bipartisan. We have had bipartisan support for intervention in foreign affairs for a long, long time, probably over 100 years. The Spanish-American War wasn't exactly fought in the defense of this country. It has been going on and on. Woodrow Wilson didn't do us any favor. He literally, started the humanitarian wars, make the world safe for democracy, spread American goodness. We've heard that more recently coming out of the mouths of the neoconservatives. And here we are, another war. That's exactly what we need right now. We're in Iraq, we're in Pakistan. There's a war going on in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yemen's being bombed. And what's our administration doing, and what has the Congress so far complacently accepted? Starting another war. I mean, where in thunder are there coming from? It just makes no sense whatsoever to go and do this. Whoa. I'm a fan of the Christian just war theory. This has been established in St. Augustine, and it's pretty precise and tells us about when war can be justified. Not to promote war, but to limit war. And yeah, if you think about it in details, and I will go over the certain things that we're supposed to look at when you're looking at the just war theory, and try to apply it to what has gone on, especially since World War II. Because quite frankly, we're getting into too many wars, we're getting into them carelessly, and we're not doing them in the proper manner. One of the first things on the list of things, they list 7 issues on what makes up the just war theory. One is proper authority. Now that sounds pretty reasonable. If a country goes to war, why shouldn't we have the proper authority? Fortunately for us in this country, our founders were very particular about the way we go to war. And therefore, they said the president can't go to war without permission of the Congress. I like that, and I would like to keep it that way. Whoa! Where did our president get permission this time? Same place Harry Truman did in order to go into Korea. They didn't come to the U.S. Congress. They went to the United Nations to get the permission to put us to war, send our kids off to be, attacked overseas, as well as the financial burden that we have placed upon us. So I would say that if we would just follow that one admonition, that we would have had a lot fewer wars over these last decades. Proper authority. UN is not proper. Matter of fact, each year I introduce legislation to emphasize not only do I believe in individual sovereignty and state sovereignty, I believe in national sovereignty. I don't even believe we should be in the United Nations.
Whoa!
Another tenet of the just war theory is that wars should be defensive. You don't start offensive wars. You defend your country, you defend our liberties if somebody attacks us. But in the last administration, we were told that we should fight preventive wars. We should initiate the war in case someday they might be able and might decide to attack us. That does not fit the just war theory whatever, and yet that is a principle now that has been accepted, and it wasn't invented with the last administration, but it was emphasized and explicitly made that we will have preventive wars, and believe me, if you're on the receiving end of our preventive wars, they interpret it in one way. It's aggression. We bomb countries, we invade countries, we end up killing people. Oh yes, we only kill enemy combatants unless we make a mistake and have an accident. In the last couple of years, we have killed over 2,000 Pakistanis, but some, we admit, our administration admit, were mistakes and accidents, and they weren't deliberate. But who were the bad guys, and why were we over there? Were those people in Pakistan about ready to attack us? They'd like you to believe that, but quite frankly, I do not believe that whether our presence in Iraq or Afghanistan or or Pakistan will do anything to make us more secure. Quite frankly, I think those wars make us less secure.
Whoa!
If war is to be justified, it should be of last resort. Which means if there is a threat and a conflict, that you should talk and try to work it out and do whatever you can to prevent the killing. And quite frankly, we have not done that. Do you think we tried to prevent our troops going in and the bombs being lobbed into Libya here in the last couple of weeks? No, absolutely none. So defensive war is one thing. And that is precise, and the proper authority is something else. And it is, if that were done, we would be involved that much less. Now, the other thing is what is the goal? Is the goal, of course, we should defend our country, but the goal ought to also be to restore peace. Peace should be the goal. It shouldn't be the goal of expanding our empire. That's when we get into trouble. When you have to confront another nation, the response should be proportional. You know, if 100 soldiers cross the border accidentally or they do something on a border dispute, you don't drop a hydrogen bomb on their cities. Under the moral code, what you do is, if you can't work this out, the response has to be proportional. You also should also accept the idea that the victory is feasible. So if a country attacks and the retaliation would mean that you would be totally destroyed and more lives sacrificed, you should reconsider what is happening. The other thing is, if you have a just war going on and you're going to follow the rules, the civilians shouldn't be attacked. If you look at the 20th century, now there's some real tragedy. Tragedy on both sides. There were many more civilians killed than armed people. Mainly because sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident. But if we were trying to calm the situation down to have less war and less killing, the civilians would be off limits. Now, that takes care of most of what is said in the just war theory, but I'd like to add one more thing that I think would help us a whole lot. We as a nation should never go to war based on lies told to us by our government.
Hear, hear.
Not only do I strongly object to what we're doing in Libya and where the authority came from and how Congress not being consulted, I also see that there's such inconsistency and hypocrisy on what we do in foreign policy. There's some There's a dictatorship in Libya. Of course, about 5 years ago, we decided he wasn't such a bad guy, and we started doing business with him. The French and the Americans and the British have invested in there. They have oil investments in Libya. Could you imagine such a thing? And in the eastern part of Libya, there are people who are truly disgusted. I'm sure they were very honest people dissenting against this brutal dictator. But also, once there was a sign that there was an uprising, a lot of individuals decided to get involved. Like, can you believe it? I imagine you can. Some of the people involved in eastern Libya now, the people we're supporting, come from the Al-Qaeda. Here we are, once again, helping a group that's Al-Qaeda, but it's just a marriage of convenience to go out because we just want to get rid of this dictator and we want to recoup some financial interest for the oil industry. If this weren't the case, why shouldn't we be doing something about Bahrain? People are getting killed there. That's a humanitarian. And what about Yemen? People are getting killed, but we're also bombing in Yemen as well. And Syria, a lot of people are getting killed. Around the world, you could list not only a dozen places today, but dozens and dozens of places, in the last 100 years where a humanitarian argument could be made. But I do believe it's humanitarian. I do believe there's a moral argument. But the way I apply the moral argument to this is I want to protect you. Your rights are being violated by taking you to war illegally and putting the financial burden on you. So my responsibility as a member of Congress is to protect your rights and your interests and not to go along with this idea that this is a humanitarian approach and we're going to make the world safe for everybody and take care of everybody. It's time that policy changed.
Yes, sir. Whoa!